Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my June wrap-up part 2, where I talk about all the rest of the books that I read in the month of June. I read 19 books and I'm here to talk about the rest of them. So there'll be content warnings in the description box down below, but without any further ado, let's get to wrapping up the rest of the books. We're going to start with another sci-fi book, an Afrofuturism one, and that is Do You Dream of Terra-Two by Temi. And this book follows a group of selected, very talented teenagers who apply for this program, and if you make it through this program and you get selected for the team, you will be sent to Terra-Two, which is a new planet that they are trying to populate, and they're going to go on the space journey to get there. And I read this one with my Patreon book club, and we had thoughts and things to discuss. I also, as part of my book club, I had my sisters featured with me, and the discussion was rife because we had a whole load of opinions and different thoughts. I was in the middle of the road category. I liked this book, but I didn't love it. I think it drew up a lot of interesting concepts and themes, but it didn't quite knock everything off the mark for me. So what I liked about this book was that you get a breadth of different types of characters, and I liked some characters more than others, and in some ways I feel like some of the characters fall into particular tropes, like the very toxic masculine guy, and then the girl who's kind of very popular and outgoing and everyone seems to love her, but she's got a lot more going on underneath the surface. You've got those type of characters in there who you can definitely see where their trajectory is going to go, but then you've also got some more characters that had a bit more of an interesting trajectory to their story and their path, and they were more interesting for me to follow. I also just love books that are about a space journey and a space trip, and I think what the first third of this book did really well was going into the detail and the depth of the anticipation of the preparation and what that is like when you're still on Earth but you're looking forward to going to space, and you're kind of dreaming, as the title says, of Terra-Two, and all of that felt really interesting to me. I just couldn't stop reading. I loved getting to see about their failures and their successes in the preparation process, and all of their personalities go through a very significant moment and a very significant shift before they take off towards going to space. And that, this book came in with surprises and things that I did not expect to have coming, and I found all of that just so interesting and so unique that I was drinking it all down, because for a book that's about going to another planet, they spend quite a bit of time earthbound. I did think that this book was going to do things differently. The way that it set it up in the beginning, I thought there were going to be more time jumps. I thought the journey in space was going to be more ambitious, I'm going to say. I don't want to give anything away, but it kind of didn't really deliver on that front, and things quickly fell into a series of events that I could predict what the outcome was going to be, and I could see the ending coming from quite a way off. And I was not happy with that, so I was anticipating it being an unsatisfying ending, and in the end I did find the ending quite unsatisfying. It also touched on a lot of themes of what could life be like if we went to a new planet? What would the constitutions be like? What would the social situations be like? And they had other examples of cults and different spaceships where different things had happened, and I found all of that quite interesting, and the different alternative ways that we could live. But I will say that the book was touching on those things in passing and didn't take the time to steadily delve in and strongly develop them. So those are concepts that they touch on that I appreciated seeing, but they don't get that much page time. It was a nice enough book. I had some issues with it. I had some joys with it. It was a good enough read. I do think the pace was a bit slow. It was so good in the beginning, but it did slow down the further I got, and that made it a bit harder to get through to reach that ending that I predicted was going to be unsatisfying. So I talked about in my part 1 how I was reading a lot of young adult fantasy and finding it mediocre, but I found one that I actually really liked, and that is A Skinful of Shadows by Hardinge. So this book is about a young girl who discovers that she has the ability to hold ghosts within her. Makepeace, our main character, she kind of tries to defend herself and protect herself against these ghosts going into her body because she's been taught that that's wrong. But when a series of unfortunate events happen that leave her in the care of a really sinister family who seem like they might have more going on than they show on the surface, maybe by letting ghosts in she'll better be able to protect herself and the people that she cares about. I thought this was really, really good. I fell more in love with the concept and the plot than the characters, which is really unique for me. I'm usually a character-driven reader, but I really liked how the plot went down and how things were unwoven. It's set in a like alternative historical fiction world where of course ghosts and kind of magic exists in some sense, but also it's set during the like uprising where the parliament is trying to fight against the king. So you've got that historical element to it, and I actually think the historical thread was one of its weakest parts, but that political battle kind of weaves in quite well to the fact that Makepeace wants to be free of this family and finds that the secrets that the Sinister family have are quite dangerous to her, but also she's learning about the capabilities of her skill with harboring ghosts within her body. So I kind of loved seeing her kind of discover what she can do, but also know that she needs to act quickly because there are people working against her, and also the whole political battle. I think all of it wove together really, really well, and I was fascinated by what you could do if you could have a skin full of ghosts within your body. I quite liked seeing what she does with that, and also the dynamic that the ghosts have and the interactions that the ghosts have with her. I found them quite entertaining sometimes, and Makepeace, even though I didn't connect to the characters as one of the most important things of this story, Makepeace was a lovely character to follow because she was always just trying her best to do the right thing and help the people that she cares about, no matter how many times other people might have let her down or not. So I liked this. I think it had a lot to do with the themes of trust and betrayal and where you want to put your trust and why you choose to put your trust in people, and it felt unique, and I think that's what I liked about it. It did feel unique to a lot of the young adult fantasy that I read, and it had that gothic supernatural edge to it that I was looking for in a young adult fantasy, so it gave me everything I wanted and it did it quite well. I would also say that this is again on the younger spectrum of young adult. I would say between the 14 to 16 age range. Ooh, this was another one that was actually really good, and that is The Memory Eater by Rebecca Mahoney, and this is a young adult magical realism book. I would say magical realism because it's set in the contemporary world, but then there's this memory eater creature, and this creature can eat your memories for you, and she lives on this beach, and we follow our main character who's kind of the keeper for the memory eater, who's always kept the memory eater under wraps and set those boundaries. But when the memory eater breaks free, she kind of takes it upon herself to try and capture the memory eater once again, and this was just a pleasant surprise all the way through. I was just impressed by this book and then impressed by it again and again. I thought, you know what, I know how this book is going to go. I've read a lot of young adult fantasy. I can see where this plot is going to unfold. Nope. I was wrong at every single turn. I also underestimated the stakes of what it is like to try and pursue a creature that can eat your actual memories. You have to have a lot of bravery to want to go after such a creature because there's so much about yourself and who you are that you can forget if you try to fight against the creature. So that already gave it really, really high stakes. So it had high stakes, but it was also following this bisexual, I believe she's bisexual, main character who's kind of struggling with grief because her grandmother has recently passed away, but she's also feeling a bit at loss because she's recently broken up with her girlfriend, but her girlfriend is helping her try to catch the memory eater. There's a lovely friendship at the focus of this, and those two girls supported each other like nobody else does, and I loved seeing that one-on-one friendship. I'm a big fan of the found family trope or of big friendship groups, but this book reminded me that there's a lot of value to be had in those one-on-one friendships that are very deep and very dedicated and loyal. I loved that the plot surprised me. It felt very well developed and fully fleshed out. I understood the capabilities of what the memory eater could do, but also I liked growing on that lore, growing on the family history and interactions with the memory eater. I couldn't predict the ending, and yet the ending was perfect and satisfying and wrapped up the book very well for a standalone book. And overall, I would say that this one felt very, very mature, and I don't know how to put it because I would still say it's a young adult magical realism book for the 14 to 18 age range. Anywhere between there could happily read this, maybe even 13. But it felt mature, like she was taking on a lot of responsibility and she has to learn a lot about what it means to actually be a teenager and to give up some of those responsibilities when actually adults should be dealing with things. And I also think the adults themselves had a lot of learning to do with how much you're allowed to let a teenager be independent and how much you still need to be the adult in those situations. And I think that's something that parents can really struggle with, finding the balance with, as well as teenagers who are learning where or how they can be independent and mature. And so I appreciated that those themes were so deeply entrenched into the book, while it was still balancing all of the magical elements, while it was still having a romance and a friendship. It just did it all so well. And while I was reading it, I was like, this is okay, I'm enjoying it, but I don't love it. But by the time I closed this book, I thought that was actually very profound and very well mastered and written. So I appreciated this young adult contemporary magical realism book, and I think more people should give it a go. Oh, another one that was really good. So this is a proof of Is This Okay by Harriet Gibson, and this is what the finished copy looks like, not too different from the proof, to be honest. And I thought this was really good. It's a non-fiction memoir where Harriet Gibson is talking about parasocial relationships with people online and how they can be very, very addictive. And she's talking about the parasocial relationships you form with influencers and creators and celebrities that you don't even know, down to strangers that you think you might be able to suss them out from having seen them on the street, to people that used to be significant in your life but no longer are, but you still follow them online and check in with what they're up to. And so I thought this memoir was just amazing because Harriet was so honest about some of the creepy stuff that she's done, about some of the bizarre stuff that she's done in search for that kind of connection to people online, but also her happy and celebratory moments as well. It was so interesting because you can tell that Harriet is addicted. You can tell that she actually has a problem around how she views herself and compares herself to people online. But it was also really, really relatable. We've all been there. We've all compared our journey to somebody else's. We've all checked back on an ex that we shouldn't check back on. We've all wanted to like see what this celebrity was up to. And it was interesting seeing the balance of the line between when it becomes a problem, between when it's something that's accepted and okay for you to do. So I found myself relating to a lot of this book while also being able to see the ways in which it easily toppled into the extreme. Now that is what the first half of this book is really about, but I will say that in the second half, as Harriet gets a bit older, it's also a lot about her early onset menopause diagnosis that she receives when she's in her 20s. So her menopause is early onset, and this kind of kickstarts a rush to become pregnant, to like have a child if she wants to have one before her menopause is complete. And in that process, she does a lot of comparing herself online to other people's pregnancy journeys. I've not been pregnant, I'm not looking to be pregnant soon, but as someone who is friends with lots of mothers and also has a sister who is pregnant at the moment, I've been hearing a lot about how toxic that can be to a lot of new time parents and also even long time parents, because every journey, every pregnancy is so different and the expectations can be different than the reality. So seeing her journey with that and that comparison that she latches onto was just really insightful. And where this book ends, I feel like it was a very healthy place for it to end. It felt like a conclusive story, but it also was just, it struck me by how honest Harriet Gibson was, how funny she managed to make this book at times, how relatable, how outrageous, but in some ways it was also quietly really sad as well when you see those comparisons being made, when you see her judging herself. And I just thought it handled all of that in a very conversational, easy to read way. I actually read this in a few days because it was almost like Harriet was confessing to me some of the things that she's done, like, oh, this is a juicy story about my past, you're going to want to know about it. And that's how I felt when I read this book. I started the Ophelia Girls by Jane Healey for All the World's a Page in April, and I just finished it in the month of June, and I felt mediocre about this book, but a lot has to do with me and less so with the book, which I shall go on to explain. So this one follows two storylines, and I read this for the past storyline, which is where you're following a group of teen girls who spend their time pretending to be Ophelia from Hamlet. They get themselves all wreathed in flowers, they find a body of water, and they pretend to drown and take photos of each other in that aesthetic. And the past storyline was done really, really well. I loved it. The descriptions, it was giving me the gothic Shakespeare retelling element that I came to this book for. It served, it gave me what I was looking for. But the present day storyline is about one of these Ophelia girls when they are older, and she has a family now, and her daughter recently had a terminal illness, but has recovered. It's post the illness. They're trying to rebuild their family, return to a sense of normalcy, but they're also having financial difficulties. So it's set during the summer of them trying to repair their family dynamic. while also flashing back to the past of what happened to the Ophelia Girls. And I struggled with the present day storyline. At first I was really interested in how this post-grief element that you enter into when you expect that someone might not survive and then they do survive and you've got to continue on. I find that a really interesting kind of mindset to be in, and it was interesting to see the strain on the family dynamics and how they had to break that down and reshuffle and refocus their attention to their children. But what also happens in the present day storyline is a romantic relationship between an adult and someone who is under 18 years old. And personally, I struggle with that. I don't think I can be very comfortable reading it. I was just so uncomfortable while I was reading this book. That's just a personal thing, and I'm not saying this book is celebrating that relationship or condemning it. I don't want to give that away to you, but whether or not the book represents that relationship in a way that's condemning it, I personally struggle. I see that person as a child. I really struggle to read this and feel comfortable. So that had a big impact on my reading, and it just meant I wasn't enjoying my reading experience. I'll say that the writing in this is luscious and lovely at points. I'll say that the past storyline gave me everything I wanted with a little bit of a surprise element to it that I didn't expect but was nice to see. But as for the present day storyline, everything kind of unfolded as I expected that it would, and so there were no surprises there, and it kind of made it a bit more of a slog to get through the present day storyline elements, and I just wanted to always go back to the past storyline, which also makes sense because that's what I came to the book for. So while this wasn't necessarily a bad book, it wasn't necessarily a good book for me either. Another okay read. So I do like reading middle grade fantasy, and I was surprised by how many witchy middle grade fantasy stories I was enjoying. So I tried Hedge Witch by Skye McKenna. This is the first one in a series, and you're following this girl whose mother has been missing for a couple of years, and she wants to find her mother, and she gets sent to live with her aunt, and she discovers that her aunt is a witch, and anybody can become a witch with the right training. So she wants to do this training as well with a couple of her classmates so that she will be able to better be prepared and have skills for finding her mother. That's basically what this book is about, and it was a solid read. It was a solid first book in a series. There's a familiar that is a talking cat. I really liked our main character. She was just so lovely and kind, like a truly kind main character, and I love that she had her head on her shoulders. She thought things through, and she was as lovely and loyal to her friends as she could be, while also acknowledging that she had a private mission that she wanted to accomplish, that she wanted to do, and she had to work on like prioritizing where she wanted things to fall, where she wanted to put her relationship with her aunt that she didn't know that she had before, and her new friendships and her witch training, and actually searching for her mother. And I liked getting to see that conundrum and her deciding where she wanted to fall. The witch training was nice enough, and the world building was solid enough, and the story was good enough, but it just didn't do anything that particularly wowed me or particularly made me feel attached to this story as a reader. And I am an adult reader saying this. I think maybe some children are going to like it even more, but for me it was just an okay read. I enjoyed my reading experience with Wolfwood by Marianna Baer, but I don't think it's a new favourite for me or anything that I'm going to remember in the long term. So this is a young adult book with a magical realism element. Can you tell I wanted to read a lot of those books last month? And in this one we follow a teenage girl who is living with her mother, who is an artist, and her mother is very famous for having created this exhibition called Wolfwood. But her mother stops painting Wolford all of a sudden. The bills are mounting up, her mother seems depressed, and when the exhibit calls and say they want to exhibit Wolfwood if her mother would make the last few paintings for it, the daughter says yes. She says yes, but she is going to have to create those paintings herself. And as she creates those paintings, she ends up travelling into the world of Wolfwood as if it's a real place that she can go to, and it starts to become harder to distinguish between the real world and the fantastical world that she disappears into when she is painting. I liked a lot about this book. I think, again, I liked our main character. I like that she is just wanting to be a teenager, but she's really actively being the adult in her family as well, and she has to kind of work through how that responsibility is distributed. I liked seeing the fact that she was losing her way between the real world and the fantastical world. I will say I wanted to spend a bit more time in Wolfwood. I wanted to spend more time in this magical world and have that developed further as a stronger element to the book. book, but it wasn't. It was quite secondary, and I understand this because I think primarily this is supposed to be a young adult contemporary with lightly magical elements, and it was just kind of me craving a bit more depth to those magical threads that we do get to see. But I will say the romantic relationship in this one felt so cute, but also so realistic in terms of where the conflict comes from. I think it was really spot on and well done, and it wasn't contrived or anything. They were communicating all the way through, but I believed that they would have a hard time for the reasons that they decided that they were going to have a hard time. It just felt very realistic, especially in terms of how it felt like a very mature reason why they were struggling with their relationship, but it was a young adult book, but it still felt very mature. I don't have much more to say because I just really was in the mood to read this book when I read it, and I picked it up and I had a good time, and I liked seeing the shift and dynamic between teenagerhood and adulthood and how they manage that responsibility. I liked everything. I don't have that many negatives to say. It just didn't wow me, and it didn't have a lasting impression that I think I'm going to remember in a year's time. It's just a nice one to read. And last but not least, I read a picture book, so I'm going to talk about the picture book, and this is called The Best of Me by Marvyn Harrison and Rochelle Falconer. So I think it was last year I read another book that was called I Love Me, which was, it's kind of loosely connected to this one. They can be read in tandem, but they're not sequels of each other. And this is a picture book that is full of positive affirmations for children to say with their parents. And a lot of it is about being the best you that you can be. So it talks about, you know, how you communicate with other people, how you play with other people. It talks about how you rest. It talks about how you eat, how you move, things that you can do to just live your best life possible, how you think about yourself. And I appreciated the different ways that it showed that you could be the best you possible. I liked that we had really bright and colourful illustrations, which you can kind of see a bit here. I love positive affirmations. I think they're such a healthy habit and thing for children to get into. I even say them myself as an adult, not out loud, but usually internally. But I do think positive affirmations are just a really good practice to have. And I like that it has a seek and find element to every page. And the back of the book, I think some of these things like find and seek elements and like how to read a positive affirmation book with a child out loud and what you can do to make it more interactive for the child. Sometimes you as a parent don't know how to implement those things into the reading process because like who gets a guide to parenting? Nobody. So I like that the fact that after the book is done, at the end of the book there are notes for parents on how you can make the most out of the picture book, like a little bit of a guide which can help you along the process as a parent or guardian reading or teacher reading the book with a child. It was lovely, it was colourful, it had black characters and like single dad vibes throughout it, which is also nice to see that representation. So really good picture book, and that was a nice read in my month. And there you have it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of June. It was a really big range of genres, from like non-fiction to sci-fi, fantasy to picture books. It was everything, all the age audiences, all the genres. You know how we do it around here. Please let me know in the comment section down below, what was the last book you read that was outside of your comfort zone, that you don't usually read? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!